What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. Ross, how you doing, my man? It's Tuesday. We got a day off. I think I'm a little bit recharged, ready for the home stretch in Cali. How's things for you, man?
Great. I'm right there with you. Recharged, rejuvenated, ready to go. And obviously, kind of like bittersweet, the idea of it almost being over, but then knowing that also means that football is almost here, like a real regular season football is almost here. I'm all about it. So feeling nothing but good.
Yes, I agree for sure. And so day 15 of Saints training camp, we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. And again, appreciate all you guys tuning in, subscribing, whether you're watching us live or whether you watch us on a replay or whether you listen to us. We all appreciate it. And don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button and tell all your friends and stuff. Ross, day 15 is Saints training camp. There's so many different ways we can go with this, right? I mean, I think a brief overview. Derek Carr looked really good today. He was 11 of 11. And you look at Spencer Rattler, bad day, 2 of 8. There's also Trevor Penning. So I'm going to spin the roulette wheel here for you. Where should we start and where should we go first?
Yeah, you got to start with the starting quarterback, right? I mean, going 11 of 11 in a practice day a couple of days after you left a lot to be desired as a starting offense in the preseason game. I think it's a good response. I get that it's practice. Don't get me wrong. I know we're talking about practice. I get it. But at the same time, like, this is what they needed to show. This is what they needed for their own kind of benefit too. And so I was all about that. And look, it's no surprise to me either that as the team is getting healthier, the offense is all of a sudden performing better. Like, obviously that makes sense too. But I think that an 11 of 11 day for Derek Carr, who also excelled in the red zone today, I think that's a good thing, whether it's practice or not, and especially following up what that preseason game looked like.
Yeah, and for those, again, before somebody says it, like this, I did 11-11 because there's also one of them was a touch pass, the other one was like a shovel pass. Those are technically passes. That's where we get 11 from, just so everybody knows and is clear. But
yeah, the context is important.
The context is important, right? But Taysom Hill, a big part of that. Derek Carr throwing a couple touchdowns to him today, which is good to see. First time we've seen Taysom Hill throw some passes and like walkthroughs and all that stuff. That was pretty exciting. And look, I think Derek handled himself well and today. And, you know, it's just one of those things where you put stuff out and people just come to the woodwork and all this. And somebody had made a comment. And it's like, yeah, I bet they're all 11 to Alvin Kamara. I'm like, Alvin didn't even practice. We'll get into that in a second. Like, you know, again, this is a thing, and that we've talked about this before, but Derek Carr is the starting quarterback. It's not Spencer Rattler. It's not going to be Spencer Rattler. And maybe next year it happens, or if Derek Carr gets hurt or something like that, then we can maybe have this conversation more. But you know, you need your first quarterback, your first team quarterback to do well. And I think he did well. That hookup to Cedric Wilson Jr., that one-hander that he grabbed, I mean, that got like the offense all sorts of hype. That was like a thing of beauty. And so, like, I like seeing that. And I think with Derek, what I'm seeing more of is maybe more accountability on his part, right? And I mean that, and we've talked about that in the past, like even going back to OTAs, mini camp and stuff, just making sure that, hey, bad ball on my part or doing this. I think he's being a little bit more authoritative in the sense of like trying to get the troops rallied a little bit. He's going up to receivers after the play. I saw a moment where he's talking with Jordan Mims, just saying, here, where I need you to be, here's what needs to happen. You know, he's taking ownership if it's a bad ball and stuff. And so, look, I appreciate those things. I think that's what needed to happen and what needs to happen. And I got to say, not that I'm trying to deviate too much, but I think it kind of lines up with some of the things Cam Jordan said after practice. Like he said that people are kind of getting called out here and everybody is nobody's taking it personal and nobody's getting quote unquote butthurt about it. I think that's just been big and a common theme we've seen throughout camp.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree with that. And I think that's part of the idea too, right? Is that it all goes to competition. Competition has been the conversation all of camp. And so you could generate that competition by pitting players against players at the same position. You could pit players against players at opposing positions, wide receiver versus corner, running back versus linebacker, whatever. But you could also pit players against themselves. And if a player isn't doing what it is that they're expected to do, and you have the ability to call them on it, call them on it. And it's so funny because it's a complete departure from what it is that Alvin Kamara, kind of brought to light just a few years ago, where he said, look, people aren't getting, when you see something, you should say something in practice, and that's not happening. And so like, that was the big thing that I reminded people of, because I've gotten the question a couple of times, hey, do you think that, Dennis Allen, saying what he said about Kendre Miller, saying what he said about A.T. Perry, saying what he says about what he's been saying about Nick Saldiveri, like, their performances and kind of calling them to task and all these other things, you think that that's going to, have a bad impact? And it's like, well, what would you rather? Would you rather what it was that Alvin Kamara was talking about a couple years ago, where no one's being called out and there is no accountability? Or would you rather this, where people are being called out and there is accountability? I think you'll take the latter over the former all the time. On Derek Carr's day, real quick, I wanted to give my two favorite plays from Derek Carr today. My number one was the pair of play actions that took place before a throw to A.T. Perry. That one was really nice. And then a nice catch and run. I think our favorite, I think this one really was my favorite one, though, was the catch and run by Foster Moreau. Really nice play action, looked up the middle, hit Foster Moreau, middle of the field, attacking the middle of the field in the intermediate area. And then Moreau getting just the right angle and ended up beating Willie Gay around the edge for what would have been a huge gain, if not a touchdown. So two good on-time deliveries, hitting receivers in stride, off the play action, everything like that. I think that's another reason why I think that the 11-by-11 day by Derek Carr is important, is because it's another example of, hey, the system is working, right? Because when the system's actually being run, which is not what was happening against Arizona last weekend, you can see the immediate value of it.
Yeah, and the decision making, I think that was the big thing for me, is that he's able to go through everything quick and see it all quick, diagnose it quick and stuff. And again, that's going to come with the other quarterbacks, I feel like, but that's what you're supposed to do out of a veteran quarterback and all this other stuff, right? Like, I mean, it's supposed to work like this, work in harmony and all that other stuff. And so, look, I agree with you. That Holker play was, I mean, not the Holker, but the Moreau play was a really big one for him. Holker had one later, but it was from a different quarterback. He had one earlier for a different quarterback, but it was, just a welcome sight, hitting Chris Olave, just doing a couple of different things. Like, it's working different parts of the field, working the sidelines, working the middle, working intermediate, working deep areas. Like, it's just all over. It's just refreshing that it's not just a check down.
Yeah, good point.
Like, I just think that is, and of course, this could all look different week one and stuff. But again, I gotta say, like, I appreciate that. But conversely, look, Trevor Penning's like really under a microscope right now. He's strong in run support, right? Like, he's solid. He's got it in run support. I know that. The pass protection is just hit or miss still. Like, he had one good rep when making a block on Cam, then Cam just like totally got by him and whiffed them and stuff. Like, are we at this point now where, like, are we legitimately worried about Trevor Penning? And, like, do they need to start saying, okay, let's get at least a contingency plan in place, or is it going to be like they try to just put somebody else there instead?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been worried about Trevor Penning since OTAs, but sure, I think you have to have a contingency plan ready. Like, you have to be ready to pivot away from Trevor Penning pretty quickly here. I think that the San Francisco 49ers game this Sunday becomes a really big kind of proving ground for Trevor Penning. Like, it feels like, you've got to practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, travel on Saturday, and then Sunday against the game. You got 3 practices in a game to show something. Because I can't say for sure that he's shown anything yet. I mean, it hasn't been positive. Like, this has not been a good move for Penning over to right tackle yet. Like, it just hasn't solved any issues and things like that. And one of the things that I've talked about from the very beginning with the move from left tackle to right tackle is that, typically speaking, position changes for struggling players don't usually make them perform better, right? Like that, there's not a lot of examples of that. I mean, I can't name one, but there's just not a lot of those opportunities, and there's not a lot of examples of that actually panning out. And so I think the Saints, have to be ready to pivot. They have solid options to go to behind him on the roster. Ali Udo, putting him back at his natural position as opposed to forcing him to play on the inside where he has struggled, could go a long way. Landon Young, I get it. You love the versatility of a Landon Young and what he can do as a 6th offensive lineman and a depth player, sure. But if he's going to be better for you at right tackle, than what Trevor Penning is showing you at right tackle, then that's exactly where you go. And then outside of that, I think you're looking at either the free agency market or who gets cut at roster cuts to see if you can find somebody that might be a better caliber for you at the position than what Penning has shown so far, especially in the pass protection category. I think that's the big thing that you've got to be able to find.
Yeah, and we've said from day one, if this offensive line doesn't have it together, this doesn't work. Like this just doesn't work, and this is concerning that we're past the midway point. Now we got 2 more preseason games, but like it's just one of those questions. Like, is it just going to magically get better? You know what I mean? I guess that's my only thing. Is like I don't know how patient they're going to be. How if it's going to get like exponentially better, or we're just going to see okay, it is what it is. But at this point, like I guess it's just. It's unsettling. And look, I got to tell you, I know Oli Udoh is a potential option. I haven't been that impressed with his camp yet. You know what I mean? Like I know he has
haven't either, but
all starts a couple times, some holding penalties and stuff. And so it's just like right now at this point, you know, and I see this as a legitimate question. Maybe you could weigh on 2-part is should Penning get moved to guard? And then also was the other one was move Taliese Fuaga back to right tackle. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't see the value of moving Trevor Penning in at guard because he's not going to be a starting guard for you. So what do you gain? Like you're making your first round pick at tackle a backup guard. If you're going to do that, then you might as well just like cross train him and let him be your 6th offensive lineman, right? Like that's kind of the way that I would look at that. Is that yeah, you can cross train him, but he's not going to start for you at guard. He's not going to start over Lucas Patrick. He's not going to start over Cesar Ruiz. So you can do it, but you're not doing it for the purposes of getting him into the starting lineup. Right now, what they're focused on is what do we have to do with Trevor Penning to get him in the starting lineup, which makes sense because they invested not just a first-round pick, but a lot of trade mechanism move-arounds for that first-round pick that they ended up investing in him. So that would be my one thing to mention for that. You can do it, but that's not what they're focused on right now. They're not focused on Trevor Penning being a reserve. They're focused on Trevor Penning being a starter. So what's his path to being a starter? So that's the way that I look at that. And I don't touch anything with Taliese Fuaga. He's looked great at left tackle. Yes, that's the most important position outside of center on that offensive line. Don't mess with it. If it's working, and there's not a lot to look at on the offensive line right now to where you look at it and you go, hey, that's working. That's one of those things. And so you don't touch it. I think you absolutely leave him at left tackle.
Yeah, because I mean, again, that's Derek Carr's blind side, right? So I mean, at this point, you know, I don't want to say square peg round hole. I don't want to do all these things or euphemism, whatever you want to call it. But like the interior, like Eric and Cesar are set. And the left side I feel good about. I think if you were to move Fuaga to the right side, then yeah, your right side would be great, but your left side, I mean, that's just going to be asking for disaster, in my opinion. Yeah. But you know, they got to figure this out.
Yeah, I think this question too has 2 parts because it was like maybe sign Bakhtiari and move Fuaga over to right tackle. But my only issue with signing Bakhtiari is that how many games are you going to get out of him at this point in his career? You know what I mean? So that creates exactly what you're talking about, which is just more turmoil on the left side than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, it's something that I mean, I hope it gets figured out. We talked about this a few episodes ago. I was just wondering how much patience the team is going to have with this. You know what I mean? I mean, you're going to be tested early. And I think I pointed out that Jadeveon Clowney is one of the guys that he's going to be going up against, presumably. And so you got to figure that thing out. And again, I see in the comment or comments talking about trades or all this other stuff like that stuff. If you have to use an asset to get somebody, I just don't know that that's the right play at this point. Whereas they might just say, okay, well, we'll make it work somehow, or maybe there's another veteran that they're eyeing or keeping tabs on, or something else that we're just not seeing outside of, you know, the options that exist in front of us. Right. And so look, the hourglass is like almost run out. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a mission critical. If he doesn't have a good game against San Francisco, which again, I expect him to get, you know, probably 20, 30 snaps there, maybe even more, like, then it's kind of like, okay, the pressure needs to be put up and saying, hey, what is the plan? Because obviously you can't be happy with that. And, you know, if you're going to try to do things with this team and change stuff, you talk about accountability. So that's accountability. If it's not cutting the mustard, the best player needs to play. And if that best player ain't there, you got to find whoever that guy is going to be. Just how it is.
So. Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you there. It stinks too, man, because like I want to be real that like when it comes to Trevor Penning, like he's the type of dude, he's the type of human being that like you want to see it work for. And so like you really kind of cross your fingers for him from a personal standpoint of like, man, just I hope it just clicks, right? Like one good game doing like falling into the technique, getting the block, doing what it is that you need to do, performing well, all that kind of stuff. Like sometimes that's all that it takes. Like we just talked about A.T. Perry that way. A.T. Perry had a great game against the Arizona Cardinals when everyone was talking bad about him and everything, or at least questioning kind of like how his camp was going so far because it wasn't a great camp. And then all of a sudden after that, he's turned it on all throughout the rest of the practices. And so could the same thing happen for Trevor Penning? And so like it really is that you're just hoping for it to magically get better one time and then see if that ends up creating a rhythm of response after that to where it's like, okay, it clicks. I get it. If I just do this and I stay in my technique and I do these things, not be up so high, not give up so much space on the inside shoulder, not give up so much leverage, not wait for the defensive end to be the aggressor, let me be the aggressor, all those things, maybe it changes kind of his outlook moving forward because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good. You just have to be serviceable. If you get the left tackle spot taken care of, this is what San Francisco and Miami have done for years. You get the left tackle spot or the blind side tackle spot, right? Because Tua is left-handed. But you get the blind side tackle spot taken care of. You get an A player there. And then you can have a bunch of C's on the rest of your offensive line and make it work. You just can't have an F. You can't have a D. And Trevor Penning's hovering around somewhere within those two grades at the moment.
I'm laughing at this comment. I don't know what's going on with the Raiders, but somebody said that Andres Pete's likely to get cut by the Raiders. So I don't know if that's something that'll come happen full circle, but if that does happen. But at this point, it's just got to come together. And I hope it does. But that's, again, everything I've seen with this team, that's what keeps me up right now is the offensive line. Like I feel like we've seen what we need defensively. I think I've seen a pretty good bit from running back room, although I still think there's still room there. And then wide receiver, I think will be fine. Tight end will be fine. But, that offensive line, man, that's a tough question. One because it doesn't matter if it was a Spencer Rattler or a Jake Haener or Derek Carr. Like they'd all just not have time to throw the football if that's the case. Right. I mean, it's a point where maybe you can – I don't know if you scheme around like deficiencies there, but at the same time, that's just a tough thing to have to go through, right? And it's just unfortunate, but we're at the the final countdown there, and something has to give. I feel like, and so we'll see if it does. Let me get this one real quick. I saw it. Oh, odds of another team getting scheduled for practice. Probably slim to none.
I'd say pretty low. Yeah.
Officials are going to come in. They get an extra day. They're coming in, I think, tomorrow, which would be Wednesday. And so there's really no plans of getting extra joint practice. And it's funny. I was talking to some former players, and I was talking to Scott Shanley and Lance Moore today. Shout out to them. But they were talking about the joint practices. They pointed out a couple of things, right? Like joint practices are fun, right? They're good in that sense, but also, you run the risk of getting injured players. Like you're going up against other players that just don't have any regard for safety and some of the stuff. Not saying that I'm taking shots at 49ers or anything, but that is also some of the risks that you run in some aspects too. And so, I mean, it's just an interesting point of contention and such that they brought up today, just about their insight from joint practices and when they did it and stuff like that. I think next thing I want to talk, because I want to talk about Spencer Rattler. Obviously, we're going to talk about that. And then a couple of other things, but let's run down some attendance stuff because there's huge movement there, right? And for those who haven't seen, I think the biggest notes to take away is Demario Davis out there in walkthroughs. So that's a start, right? And he's doing drills. He's working off the side. Pete Warner was out there with his helmet, but he did not participate in walkthroughs. He was working off the side. But Marshawn Lattimore out there doing work off to the side. Like, I think that's the biggest part of that is Marshawn Lattimore doing the work off to the side. Rashid Shaheed, Equinemius St. Brown, Bub Means, all in red non-contact jerseys. They went through individual and position drills, but they did not do anything in team or one-on-ones or anything like that. But the health is trending in the right direction, but Alvin Kamara left after stretch with back tightness, something that Dennis Allen said he's dealt with before. And A.T. Perry has a sprained ankle, but he's able to walk off the field. They just can't catch a break, it seems like, in this injury department.
Yeah, it feels like every time that somebody comes back, it's like they're exchanging places, right? Like, all right, these people came back, so this person and this person is now injured, and all these other things. Like, we can't have too many healthy at the same time.
Right.
It does seem like, to your point about Alvin Kamara, about Dennis Allen saying that, like, it's something he's dealt with before. He did say, like, it's not a big deal and everything. Right. The concern is, like, is it actually a big deal, though? You know what I mean? So I don't think you're really going to, like, feel good about it until later on. But the thing that's really nice about it is that, like, Alvin Kamara is probably done for the preseason. It's not like he's playing in preseason games. I can't imagine moving forward. Like, I wouldn't expect to see starters anymore against San Francisco or against Tennessee unless they feel that not getting those starters against unfamiliar opponents against San Francisco in those joint practices means that they need to get another drive. But even if that's the case, it doesn't have to be Alvin Kamara. So I think you're okay there. A.T. Perry, I watched him walk off. I think many of us did, but watching him walk off, like, no limp, no labor. He didn't have to get helped off or anything like that. So it seems that that's a good sign, or at least a positive early sign, but we won't really know until there's imaging done and all these other things. But fingers crossed, because A.T. Perry was having a really strong day again, outside of one false start penalty that he had. And he's had, a couple of good practices in a row now after that preseason game. So I was really looking forward to seeing how he continued to build on that. So hopefully it doesn't keep him out too long.
Yeah, hopefully not. Like, you remember the other day we saw Isaiah Stallberg go down and then he finished out. He actually played through his sprained ankle, I found out. And then, after the game, he hurt again and he had to be put in a walking boat. And so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. And so hopefully that's not the case with AT, but that's just an example of, ankle sprain, just because he walked off. Maybe not necessarily the best news, but it could go either way. And like you said, you pointed out, imaging is what needs to be done, but good sign that the team is at least trending in the right direction. Paulson Adebo was around watching. Kendre Miller still watching, but he's still not able to get out and do anything, like a lot of things. Like, he didn't do any work off to the side like he did the other day. So Mason Tipton was out there observing. So it's just like you're starting to get bits and pieces back and stuff, but I don't know if it's going to be enough in time. Like Kendre Miller, Nick Saldiveri, those are the two guys that I'd worry about. I'm not saying that they get cut for sure, but at this point, you don't have a lot of time left. You don't have many practices left, and you don't have a lot of time to get back in the action and then start making a case for why the team should keep you on the roster. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if those two guys aren't back at practice next week and playing against the Tennessee Titans for the final preseason game, I just don't know, man. I don't know what you do with those guys. Like, maybe you could move them to injured reserve at the beginning of the season, give them a few weeks or whatever without giving up the roster spots. I don't think that you cut them, but you're going to have to figure out something to do with them. So you could, teams can now move two players to injured reserve before or at roster cuts, so they don't have to carry them on the 53-man roster and then move them to injured reserve. But then if you're doing that, you're doing it with the intent to bring them back. That's already 2 of your 8 allotments to bring back. You've already used a quarter of your allotments to begin the season. Like, that becomes pretty challenging too. There's a lot of economics to it all. We do know guys like Nephi Sewell, Tano Passanio, Dennis Allen pretty much confirmed for us today that they're not going to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. Right. That's what we expected from the very beginning, but they're on the physically unable to perform list. So they could roll in on that list and then come back later on in the season without taking up either of those IR spots. So that could be a way to go, because I just have no idea like how you get to evaluate these guys at all at any point. It's surprising to not have seen either of them back yet.
Yeah, right. And I mean, you at least see Tano walking around the field and he's coming off an Achilles injury. And then
he has been
Nephi, he's around too. And it's just like and Dennis Allen pointing out that his rehab is going great and they really love them some Nephi Sewell. But you know what I mean? Like, at some point you got to get on the field. And if you can't, then hopefully that doesn't mean like if you have to carry them on a spot and then IR them, then you cut 2 players that get claimed somewhere else and you just lose the 2 players that probably would have more of an impact than what they're having right now. So that's the only.
That's why I love That's why I love the rule change now to where you can put them on IR without having to carry them. You can put 2 on IR before having to carry them on the roster. And so maybe they take advantage of that. But again, like, you're doing that with the intent of bringing them back. You can only bring back 8 in a year. So it's tough. You can bring back unlimited in the postseason, but in the regular season, you're limited. So that makes it really challenging.
For sure. And then let me tack this. Z asked about trading Jeffcoat. Dislocated elbow is what happened with him. It was out indefinitely, but he didn't have to have like surgery or anything. So that was the good news. So, but still, I imagine would be a little bit like, I don't know if we'll see him anytime soon too, but that's another one that's unfortunate and such. But yeah, I mean, some good encouraging attendance notes, some good things we've seen, some not so good things. Let's get into Spencer Rattler, right? His day. Missed practice on Sunday with the thigh contusion, if you will. And today he's kind of wearing like this leg compress and stuff on his left leg. I mean, he wanted to practice on Sunday, but they held him out precautionary. I don't know if it's related, but today he only finished 2 of 8. And he only got he had one completion early, which was a beautiful hookup to Dallin Holker that had a major yak on it. I'll let you kind of talk and break that one down in a minute. But in the middle and up until he got to the development period, he didn't complete another pass. And he also got picked off by Rejon Wright. And that was not a good hookup, not a good look, because I don't know if the receivers weren't on the same page or what was going on. And those breakdowns happened, but not a good day for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah. And you know what? Good.
Yeah.
This is the way that
he's okay to have not a bad. It's okay.
This is a good thing for Spencer Rattler because you know what? He gets to take this on as adversity and then now come back and see if he can bounce back from it tomorrow. I think this is one of the best things that could happen to Spencer Rattler. I know I sound insane. I get it. I know I sound like I'm wearing the most rainbow colored glasses. There we go. We both sound crazy. No, but like even like leaving all that aside, because like whether or not Spencer Rattler pans out, like what impact that has on the New Orleans Saints, we have no idea. But the fact of the matter is that like when you come out there and you have this, what was like an outstanding debut for a rookie quarterback in his certain situation, right? Leading a touchdown drive, running a touchdown in, and then in his first drive, and then in his last drive, leading that game-winning drive at the end. Everything in the middle was like fine, not great, but still had those 2 highlights, and that's excellent. That's good. That's good. And then to come off of that, it's really easy to get overly confident. It's really easy to come off of that and go, you know what? My first ever NFL debut, it was a preseason game. I get it, but I led this game-winning drive, all this other stuff. Easy to just get comfortable. And then you show up at practice, you have this thigh contusion, you're not, they keep you from practicing, right choice. And then you get the day off and you come back in and you struggle. Now, all of a sudden you've got charge, you've got drive, right? I got to prove that that's not really who I am. So I'm so excited to see Spencer Rattler tomorrow go up against the second team. He was with the third team today, right? He was with the second team. My bad. So he'll go up against the third team. He'll go up against the third team tomorrow. My bad. But in any case, I want to see him bounce back. I think that that's great. This is part of what you're trying to prove in training camp is that you can manage and navigate adversity. Now here's his chance to do that.
Yeah, of course. And again, this is the part of growing pains with the rookie. And I guarantee you go back to like CJ Stroud, you go look at Justin Herbert when he was a rookie, Joe Burrow when he was a rookie. Like all of these quarterbacks, when they're rookies, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things. You're not going to look perfect all the time. Now, again, this is what we're telling you, right? You know what I'm saying? I know people have already formulated their opinion and stuff like that. Like, shame on you. But at the same time, like, this is kind of where we're at. And so, look, his day in practice, we've seen it. Like Drew's had bad days. Like Drew threw. And he like it happens to every single quarterback because if they always played perfect, then I think something was a little bit up. But I think Spencer will be fine. Like I think that's the biggest thing is. But I'm with you. Like I'm intrigued to see what the bounce back looks like tomorrow, even if it is against third team or whatever the case may be. And I'll say this too. Like when he was doing the one-on-one process, he made some really pretty throws. Like he had some darts, a couple of touchdown passes and stuff on that one. So it's not like I'd say he had a horrible day, but obviously I think it struggled a little bit. Again, I don't know if the injury played into that or anything like that. He was getting coaching from like Andrew Janocko on the side and stuff, trying to go through things that, where he could correct. And so look, it's going to happen in this day and age. So I think he'll be just fine, but Mama said there'll be days like this. You know what I'm saying?
Mama told me there'd be days like this, so don't trip. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, no doubt.
I love that.
I want to also hone in. I mean, because we're kind of, at this point, if you got questions, please drop them. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe. Just something we pointed out. We've been pointing this out. We've talked about this early in camp. We talked about this since the moment. But Dennis Allen giving praise to Alontae Taylor today.
Man.
Praising his work ethic, how much of a camp. Like, I know we talked about, like, Isaiah Foskey is a guy that had the most improved camp, but, like, Alontae's in that mix. Like, I don't know anybody that had so much better of a camp improvement than Alontae Taylor. But we've honed in on this since, like, day one and day two that Alontae's looked different. He's acted different. He's embraced his role. He's being more of a leader. Like, but to get in the same breath where DA might call somebody out, getting praise from DA, I think that's like the highest form of respect, because he's not a coach that does that. Like, really, he's not. Sure. Yeah.
I got asked not too long ago about who would be the jersey seller on the Saints defense in 2024. This was in the offseason, like before OTAs, mini camps, all this stuff. And I said, oh, it's Alontae Taylor. First of all, he's got the dopest jersey number because he's still rocking number 1. That's a great, easy, sellable jersey. I doubt he's going anywhere anytime soon because he has so much upward trajectory in terms of what he can do to make himself inexpendable to this team and all that. And I just think he's going to be a dog in 2024. Yeah. And so far, he has been a dog in 2024. And it's been awesome to watch. Slot, outside, all the other stuff, regardless of any of that conversation, Alontae Taylor has looked really good in the slot so far.
Yeah.
He looks really good. He's physical. He has been massively confident. Today, the thing that I loved was at the end of one-on-ones, John and I have talked about this before. You had to know. At the end of one-on-ones, John and I have talked about this before. What the team will do is that they'll throw one rep at the end, and if the offense wins that rep, a catch, whatever, then the defensive players and some of the coaches will do push-ups, vice versa. If the defense wins and the offense will do push-ups. And what I loved was that when they said, all right, last one, Derek Carr stepped in and said, I got it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then Chris Olave walked up to the line and Alontae Taylor followed him. There were no questions asked. Everybody knew those are the 3 that are going to do this rep. They get the last rep. I loved that because I thought that showed leadership. I thought that showed accountability. I thought that showed respect. I thought that just showed a lot of things. So I thought that was pretty cool. Then on the rep, I credited Alontae with a PBU on it. I thought that he played well on that rep.
And then, off the line.
Yeah, big time jam at the line. Chris Olave had to really fight to get off of the break for the route and all this other stuff. And Alontae able to make the play on the PBU. And then offense had to do push-ups. And I loved it. I just thought that was so cool. I loved the this is on us. We're the ones that are taking the last rep. I thought that was great. I love that attitude.
No, I'm with you too. I mean, again, I love the fact that it's just competition. It's like, again, I know people hate the expression, but the Saints use it all the time about the iron sharpening iron, and you talk about like
they literally tweeted it today.
Yeah, the linebacker room talking about we need to be the coffee that powers everything, all the energy and stuff. Like, I mean, I know it's the sayings, it's the rah-rah, it's all this stuff, but for a team that needs the confidence, that hasn't had the confidence, that, you piggyback off of, like last year, the meeting that Mickey and DA were involved about being bought in, and then the accountability conversations and the competition and stuff. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they're breeding a winning culture by any means, because of course they still got to go play football games, but at least it's different than what we've seen in the past. And I mean, I think it's paying off dividends for a lot of people, not just players, not just coaches.
Yeah. Big time. I think that's having a really good impact on this team. And it's a confidence builder, right? Like, every team feels like they're going to win, but not every team puts the work in to win. I think we're seeing the work.
Yeah, it's good for sure. Paul asked if you did you get a dog of the day yet?
I did give my dog of the day over at Locked On.
Okay.
Yeah, no. It was my live show for today. My dog of the day was Foster Moreau. I had to finally give it to him. He talks so much on the sidelines.
Yeah.
We can't tell you what he says, but he says a lot of things on the sideline, and they're hilarious. And it's just great energy all the time. And then he had that big catch and run. And I think anytime that you outrun former dog of the day, Willie Gay, and honestly, constant dog of the day, Willie Gay, I'm going to give you a shout out for that. So I went with Foster Moreau. And then in the game, I gave dog of the day to Nico Lalos, because I don't think he's gotten the shine that he deserves, including on my show. And so he had that sack. He had another great pressure today. So I wanted to shout out Nico Lalos for his performance in the game.
Yeah, for real. And get you a hype man like Foster Moreau. I mean, he's just 1-on-1, man. I love it. I love seeing him chirping. I don't remember him. Like, I think he chirped some last year, but I don't think I remember it to the level that we're seeing. Like, he's like the energy pulse of the offense, whereas like maybe, some of the other guys on defense might do whatever, like Cam or DeMario and stuff, setting the tone. Like, Colin too, but like, dude, he's just nuts.
Somebody must have told him, "Hey, I really like when you talk on the sideline," and he was like, "All right, bet."
Yeah, watch this. Hold my beer. Right. Oh man, I keep asking if this is the last week. Yes, this is the last week. They're in California, so they'll play their preseason game, and then they'll come back that night. So then we start the Louisiana stuff, which they got Tulane practice on Tuesday. I want to say that sounds right.
The 20th, whatever the 20th is.
That is Tuesday. Yes. We can read a calendar. Awesome. Yes. I want to point out something real quick. Well, it's never really quick with us probably, but I don't know if you picked up on this, but it's something I picked up and something I wrote in my notes. Again, go to Saints News Network. You can read all the recaps. I've kind of simplified those a little bit more. Like I've broken them up into a few different pieces. So it's not like one 3,000 word thing all at once to you. So give me some feedback on that if you may, or if you will, if you may, mother may. But at any rate, is one of the things I started writing about is I'm noticing they're using Bryan Bresee a lot more on the first team interior. And I don't know if it's like I just put it like this has been a couple of days now where him and Nathan Shepard are kind of the starting tandem, not Colin. And look, we love us some Bink, but you look about competition and stuff like that. Like, are you seeing the same things, or are you thinking that maybe they're just getting more work for Bresee, or is it something where maybe he could legitimately be like the starter in the rotation, because it is a rotation, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is really interesting. I picked up on that during the preseason game as well, because we saw that in the preseason game too, to where it was a lot of 90 and 93. Typically what the Saints have done, just to catch folks up if they don't know, typically what they've done is that they've had Colin Saunders and Nathan Shepard, or Colin Saunders and Bryan Bresee, right? Like that has been the trio, the way that trio has been used. And the reason for that is because Nathan Shepard, Bryan Bresee by trait, a little bit more interior penetrating pass rusher, David Onyemata types, just to give another name. Whereas Colin Saunders, and then now you can add Christian Boyden, have been a little bit more kind of like Malcolm Brownish, to go back to a few years ago when the Saints had like or Tyler Davison might be another good example of guys that were like really reliable run support guys on the inside. But guys like Christian Boyd and Colin Saunders also add a lot of pass rush ability as well. And so I typically we saw kind of like the 1-tech, 3-tech kind of thing. A 1-tech will line up between the guard and center. That's your usual bigger bodied run stuffer. Whereas your 3-tech will line up between the tackle and guard, which is typically a little bit more so your pass rusher. We've seen now the Saints go with a lot of more of Bryan Bresee and Nathan Shepard, and they bounce back and forth between 1-tech and 3-tech. And so I've thought it's been really interesting, John. I'm glad that you highlighted that, because I completely forgot about it. But that was one of those things that absolutely stood out to me during the preseason game. I'm curious about what that is. Do they just feel that they want that interior pass rush boost from having both those guys on the field on early downs? Or is there something else in terms they really feel like, hey, these guys have developed as run stoppers? Because that was Bryan Bresee's biggest knock outside of his health, which he's managed well here in the NFL so far. But one of the biggest playing things that was a big knock on him was his experience as a run stopper. Not that he was bad at it, but just that he didn't have a lot of experience at it. He was deployed at Clemson a lot as a pass rusher. So I'm curious if maybe there's been something about his projection in that area of the game that's led to this.
Yeah, and he's playing well. Like, I mean, I noticed him at camp. He made plays today. I mean, it's just something like for you that tune in, we're not going to hide anything, but put that in your back pocket. You know what I'm saying? That we're just kind of talking about it stuff. That way, if it happens or when it happens, y'all know, right? And all that fun stuff. But are they going to use Bink in the backfield? That was a question from Paul. We haven't seen it yet. If it's up to him, he's going to play everywhere he can. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. But Dreams ask, what's kind of the skinny on Nathan Shepard? Do you see him more as a run stopper or pass rusher? I mean, I have my thoughts and opinions, but
yeah, I kind of put him. I was just describing him and Bryan Bresee as a little bit more the David Onyemata type, so a little bit more like penetrating 3-tech pass rusher, in my opinion, is kind of what I see with Shepard.
Yeah, and I mean, he was getting sacks last year. I mean, you look to break down, he was up there. I mean, of course, they didn't have the greatest performance, but when you look at the defensive line, he was right there, right behind Bryan Bresee and stuff. And so I like me some Nathan Shepard. I think he can elevate this line a little bit more, especially going into year two. We
should say real quick too, John, when we say that about Nathan Shepard, it doesn't mean that he's a bad run defender. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying what we mean by, it's kind of like when you talk about like a heavy zone run offense. We're talking about a heavy zone run offense probably means that they're running zone runs like 65% of the time, not 100% of the time. So when we say that, like Nathan Shepard is I would call him more of a primarily, as a pass rusher. It doesn't mean that he is only a pass rusher. But it's just that like that's probably a little bit more of his calling card, I'd say, while still being able to be a good run defender.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course we got to mention this too, just like Cam playing inside. Like today, they rolled out a 3-man front. It was Cam in the middle, Carl on the left, and Chase Young on the right. So, I mean, I think that's a precursor, but we're seeing more Cam playing inside. We're seeing a lot of that stuff happening. And so, again, he's talked about it. And it's interesting because he was talking about the weight loss, or like he trimmed down. At one point, he said he was under 270. He's like, that's the first time since high school that he's been under 270.
That's insane.
He had to lost about like 14 pounds. He's been in and out trying to be like a quicker, twitchier person. But look, I mean, he's doing everything he can on his end to make sure he does some impact. But like we kind of toyed around with the idea of Cam. I think we kind of shot it down earlier that like in earlier episodes that saying, you don't just move him there, but like we could point out like on different passing downs and stuff that he could go interior. What's the advantage of putting him on the interior?
You just get a third pass rusher out there. I mean, like that's kind of the big thing. And then now you're creating some havoc, and you're creating some, you're changing things up on that offensive lineman that is used to going up against these bigger body defensive ends that don't move, defensive tackles that don't move the way that an experienced edge rusher like Cameron Jordan moves and things like that. So you're just trying to take advantage and keep that offensive line a little bit off kilter. If you can get them back on their heels a little bit more, all those other things. The other thing that you get is somebody that really has a lot of experience running the stunt game. And so when you run these twists and things like that, if you can run those twists with two defensive ends as opposed to defensive end and defensive tackle, you're going to get a different look. Not always a better look, but you're going to get a different look off of that. So that's the other thing that it creates is you can put Cam Jordan in the middle all you want, but when it's Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson next to one another, who's actually rushing inside, who's actually rushing on the outside, becomes a little bit of a mystery for the offensive line. Same thing when you put Cam Jordan on the opposite side next to Chase Young. Who's rushing inside? Who's rushing inside? Just because he's lined up on the inside doesn't mean that he's rushing at that B gap or that A gap. He could wrap around to the C gap and get outside the tackle and all these other things. So I think that like that's a little bit of what you get with that, is that you just create some kind of schematic mystery basically in terms of how you're attacking the offensive line. Yeah,
and remember Tano was that guy for a long time, like good passing downs. And I remember him telling me before, it's like they want the best rushers on the field in those situations. And so I'm again, Cam can still, like, he's doing the things in terms of his body and everything to try to be at least able to move and affect what he can. But look, it's hopefully it just works. That's the biggest thing. So that's all we can hope for, is that it works. But early signs is it is working, and it's exciting. And so again, we talked about I don't know how many episodes ago, the Granderson, Young, Chase Young, and Cam Jordan all on the field together. Like he said that before in his comments. So it's exciting. It's an exciting wrinkle, but will it work? I think so. How it works, we'll see. Hemisphere, I'm sorry. He's asking how Kendre Miller is doing. He's not on the field. He's not practicing.
We don't know.
I mean, he showed up today at practice, and he's just been doing it. I don't know the levels of hamstring injuries, but other people have come back from hamstring injuries. He has not. And again, he got hurt on day one in drills, so it's just not good. So
it stinks, man.
Yeah, it does stink, because I really think, and I think they could use they could use a Kendre Miller. You know what I mean? That's the sad part, is that they really could use him in this offense. That's a really good point, John, because like if Kendre Miller were healthy and participating and doing moderately well, we'd probably be talking about him as RB2 right now, because that separation between Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, and then like you get to the rest of the running backs is huge. And so if Kendre Miller was performing somewhere in that gap, that's all he'd have to do, and he would have a huge role in this offense. And instead, he's not able to get out on the field. And that stinks, because you know that the talent's there. I mean, we saw it. We saw it at the end of the season last year, all that. We saw it during OTAs, mini camps, things like that. He was one of the guys that always kind of caught everybody's eye and everything. It just makes sense that like that would have been his opportunity. And it just stinks to see that like he hasn't even been able to take advantage of it since drills on day one. That's wild. That's tough. And maybe he'll get back in the mix, but again, I don't expect him to play in the 49ers game. And so that leaves him, when they come back to Louisiana, does he get in the mix? That's one of the big storylines to follow for sure, in addition to like Trevor Penning and all the other stuff that's going on too. So before we as we're kind of wrapping up and getting out of here, I definitely want to mention special teams. Like we can start with Charlie Smyth. He was 5 of 7 today, missed from 51, was wide left. Yep. Or no, wide right on 51.
Wide right on that
59, one. He was wide left. And so he's 41 of 50 in camp, but he's making some kicks that he should, and he's building off some confidence, but then missing those last two, that was tough. But I got to tell you, the bigger story for me is Matt Hayball. Like the dude had a flawless day of punting. Yeah. 3 punts that had over 5-second hang time. Like, and he can just boom it. Like, I know nobody probably wants to hear about a punting competition, but everybody does complain about Lou Hedley and all this other stuff at the same breath. But like, if he punts that way and he can do it consistently, then Saints are going to have a quandary under him.
Yeah, man, that's going to be big. And I thought Lou Hedley performed. I think people seeing him punt, standard kind of NFL traditional punting style in that preseason game, I think maybe alleviated some concerns. But man, Matt Hayball's leg. And then he had one that he put down at the 1 yard line that went out of bounds at the one. He had others that he put in good position for people to make plays on, even though not all of them were able to make plays, all that stuff. I thought he looked excellent today. Every ball he kicked looked fantastic. Yes. Fantastic today. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be one I want to just keep seeing. And so like they did this so Groupie and Hedley handled the first half, Hayball and Smyth handled the second half. I expect that to probably be the same thing. And then maybe the third game, if you're going to do the same thing, but I don't know. And again, we've said that there's no pressure on Charlie Smyth, right? Like he's a international pathway player. They have a roster exemption for him. I know he wants to start, but maybe it's not that time yet. But if he can put it together, it will certainly make things interesting. I'd say that. But for Matt Hayball, man, if he can continue to do that, I think the Saints might have to make an interesting decision there. So that'll be something to keep tabs on. Thanks, John Butler, for noticing about looking slim. So I have tried. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hemisphere brings a good question, because I actually asked Shamar Jean Charles this today, just kind of his thoughts on the new kickoff rule, and then Jalen Ford also talked a little bit about that too. But it's just kind of like the whole getting used to it and nuances and stuff. But I mean, I think it's going to work fine. It's certainly different and more exciting than what we've seen. I know that for a fact. And so I expect big plays to happen. I just don't know in the early stages if we're going to see that just yet. But look, we've talked about these kickoff rules plenty on this show because we're nerds and all that stuff. But I mean, what's your thoughts? Do you like it? Is it so far, or do you like, I want to see more type thing?
Somebody dropped the D-Wade gift because I love it. I love it. I think it's great. I just love seeing kickoff returns again.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Know.
Like, I know that that's so basic, but just as somebody that loves the game of football, I'm excited that kickoffs are a play in football again, when they rarely were last year. I think it was less than 20% or right around 20% of kickoffs were returned last year. No thanks. No, thank you. Want to see the returns all day. And so I love it. I think it's great. And like, the viewing experience isn't massively different. The playing experience is very, very different, but the viewing experience isn't very different. Everybody still meets around the 25-yard line before it's all said and done. The plays are still, these opportunities where you're looking for the lane to develop and all that. Your kickers, your last line of defense, one way or another. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't impact that much stuff. It just looks different, but the play is effectively all the same. And there's an actual return, so I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I just can't wait for week 1 opening kickoff. Well, if the Saints win the toss, if not, it's okay. When they get the kickoff first, when Rashid Shaheed gets to return it, I'm just saying.
I'm with you on that.
Like,
I'm with you on that.
I cannot wait to do that. What up, T Dirty? One of our fans that came out at the meet. Dude's amazing. Like, everybody that we met was amazing that night from our live show. So appreciate that again. Ross, anything else before we kind of get out of here as we're wrapping down? Anything from your notes that stood out? I'll go through mine again just to check. And if y'all have any last second questions, feel free.
I guess we should.
3 pages notes.
Yeah, I guess we should mention that the Saints did have a transaction today. They moved on from fullback Zander Horvath. Yeah, they waived Zander Horvath.
Shocked by that? Or do you think that's more about Adam Prentice?
I think I'm a little shocked by it, but not fully, because I don't know that really means that Zander Horvath's opportunity and time is over. I think the Saints just need numbers at corner. Mac McCain's, he's injured. You got no Marshall Lattimore. You got no Paulson Adebo. The defensive back room is also impacted by the absence of Miller Bradford right now and stuff like that. So I feel like it could very well just be, hey, we need to make a spot for another guy to help out over on the defensive side. And so they bring in Caleb Ford-Demet, who is a Texas State guy most recently. He started college back in 2017, didn't graduate until 2023 last year, or didn't finish his eligibility until 2023 last year. Finished up at Texas State. So Saints have gone from having one HBCU guy to having now 4 HBCU guys on the roster, which is pretty dope. We're always a big fan of that. But look, I could see a real possibility to where, like, when Mac McCain and Paulson Adebo and, Marshall Lattimore are healthy, that they make a move and potentially even bring Zander Horvath back at some point. I don't think he performed poorly at all, so I don't know if the door's closed on that. But it does position Adam Prentice pretty well, at least for right now. And look, maybe some of it too is that they know that they're having trouble with their offensive line, and so maybe having the better blocking fullback around is better for them at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And the fact is, like, just because it happens doesn't mean, like, Mark Evans was one that got waived, and then they brought him back a little bit later after they had some problems at offensive line and stuff and injuries. And so again, I was a little bit surprised, but again, I also don't think Adam Prentice is a bad by any means. Like, I think he's solid at what he does. Like, he's really smart. He's intelligent. He does a lot of dirty work. He can open up run lanes and stuff. Like, again, I know fans will write him because of last year passes, whatever the case. I get it. I understand that, but you got to block in this NFL. You got to pass protect. You got to do certain things, and a fullback, Saints use one. He can do a lot of the things that they need him to do, and you got Taysom Hill too. Taysom's doing a lot of that too. So, let me just check one last scan. But as we're
while you do that, while you check yours, I'll say Dallin Holker. I know we kind of referenced it earlier, but he was back to fully participating today. He was
that play fake. Oof.
That was really good. Yep.
Yeah, deep connection from Rattler in the first team period. That was his first completion. That's he's rolling to the left, and then hits Holker, gets a major yak. Play fake Robinson. That was one of the prettiest plays of the day for sure. But that Cedric Wilson one-hander near the sideline, that was the play of the day.
No
Like, that was a thing of beauty.
You know what I liked about that Dallin Holker reception too was the route. So the route was, I believe it was a split action release. So that's when you have a tight end on one side of the field that's actually set to run a route on the opposite side of the field, but they cross behind the line of scrimmage. And so they cross behind the line of scrimmage, which sometimes makes it look like they're going to get a head start over there to block on that side. And so they fake the play to the opposite side and then ended up throwing the pass over to Holker as he released from the backfield. I love those routes. The split zone action or the split zone release is like some of my favorite stuff in football. It's like one of my favorite things that teams do.
For sure. And of course, I don't want to just glance over that, but Jake Hayner's day, he threw a couple touchdowns. He did one in red zone, getting one to Jordan Mims on a pass from 7 yards out. Nice little wheel route connection that they had. Beautiful placement on the ball, touch pass, Khalil Hudson in coverage, one of the better linebackers they have. I definitely have to appreciate that. And in the last period in the development, got a nice little touchdown hook up to Kevin Austin Jr., who continues to just low-key make some plays. Like he looked good in one-on-ones and stuff, like playing special teams and stuff. But I can't not talk about Jake Hayner because he definitely had a pretty good day on his hands. So again, he's playing 13 reps. It'll flip-flop on Wednesday and all that other good stuff. And so let me just get yes, we did talk about Penning's progress, John. It'll be on the replay for sure, but it's going to be earlier, probably right after we talked about
right after it was about Carr.
Yeah, right after Derek Carr. So all that good stuff. But anyways, Ross, anything big coming up on Locked On? What you got cooking in the lab right now?
Tomorrow, I'm going to do a breakdown of what we've seen from the defensive line so far and how it differs from what we've seen last year. And that includes some of those inside snaps we were talking about with Cam. And then I'm going to go through the positions where there have been camp battles, like wide receiver, corner, all that kind of stuff, and lay out what I think the depth chart looks like right now, which is really just like a list of the order that I think those players are in based upon where we're seeing them get snaps and things like that. And LouisianaSports.net officially has a target date. So we're hoping that we're able to get everything taken care of. But the idea here is that LouisianaSports.net will debut on Sunday. So it will be as I'm doing all of my game coverage and all that stuff. So make sure that you bookmark LouisianaSports.net. But we believe their launch date will be Sunday. We have some boxes that we have to check before we can go live. So hopefully we can cross all those thresholds before we get there. Otherwise, we'll have to push back. But it looks like Sunday is going to be the day. So I can't wait.
Awesome. Be sure to show Ross love on both platforms that he's involved with there and all the many other things that he does. So definitely wish the best of success and hope it gets up for sure on Sunday. As far as everything else, look, Saints News Network, Saints on SI, that's the big thing. Go check out all the recaps, all the work that we do there. And we're going to keep plugging away here on Second and Saints. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the coverage. If you have any feedback, suggestions, our DMs are open. Our emails are up there somewhere in the space of Twitter or on the pages we write for and stuff like that. So hit us up and we'll be more than happy to talk about that. But again, this is going to do it for us on day 15. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, go to all the links in the description, especially that Amazon link that helps us out for the show. Again, y'all have been terrific so far and all the support. And so we're not discussing Patreon or anything like that at this point, but just do us a solid, and we really appreciate all the support we get. And man, already another hour gone by, Ross.
I know, man, so quick. It's awesome.
And we'll do it again. We'll run it back on Wednesday, man. So that's going to do it for us today. On behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks signing out for another episode of Second and Saints. Y'all be good people. Take care.